Am I the a-hole for plotting a 5-month revenge, and taking everything, after my husband cheated and my stepdaughter helped him hide it? Now they're begging me to come back. I, 39F, never thought I'd be posting something like this. Let me paint the picture for you. My husband Jake, 42M, and I had been married for 8 years. I'd been stepmom to his daughter Emma, 19F, since she was 11, and I loved that girl like she was my own. We had a beautiful home in the suburbs, took nice vacations, and I thought we were pretty damn happy. Jake had a high position at a construction firm, making good money. I worked my ass off as a financial advisor. Jake and I had a small fight about him missing our anniversary dinner because of work emergencies. It wasn't our first argument about his long hours, but I wanted to be understanding. After a few days of tense silence around the house, I decided to be the bigger person and fix things. I spent an entire Sunday making his favorite meal, steak with that fancy red wine reduction sauce that takes hours, roasted garlic potatoes, and the chocolate lava cake he always raved about. I dressed up in a sexy black dress that he once said made me look like a hot trophy wife, put on makeup, did my hair, the whole 9 yards. Since he texted he was working late at the office, again, I decided to surprise him there. I'd never been to his new office since they relocated downtown 6 months ago, but I figured bringing a home-cooked meal would be a sweet gesture that would melt the ice between us. When I arrived at his fancy glass and steel building with my carefully packed dinner, I approached the reception desk with a smile. "Hi, I'm looking for Jake Wilson. I'm his wife, Sarah." The receptionist's face dropped like I'd just confessed to a murder. She exchanged this weird look with another woman at the desk, who suddenly became very interested in her computer screen. His wife," she repeated, like she'd never heard the word before. "Yes, his wife of 8 years, I said, starting to feel uncomfortable. "Is he in a meeting?" More awkward glances between staff. A guy walking by literally stopped and turned to stare at me. "Let me call upstairs," she finally said, avoiding eye contact. As I waited, I overheard whispers, thought Melissa was his girlfriend. Never mentioned a wife. This is going to be bad. My stomach turned to ice. Jake had been working here for years. These people didn't know he was married? What the actual F***ck? The receptionist returned and said Jake was in a meeting but she'd have someone escort me up. A security guard appeared, yes, an actual security guard, to take me upstairs, like I might cause a scene. Which, spoiler alert, I absolutely did. The elevator ride felt eternal. When we reached the 14th floor, the guard pointed down a hallway. "Mr. Wilson's office is the corner one with the glass doors." I thanked him and walked slowly down the hall, still carrying my stupid picnic basket of food, my heels clicking on the marble floor. As I approached the office with Jake's name on it, I could see through the glass walls. And there he was. My husband of 8 years. But he wasn't alone, and he definitely wasn't in a meeting. He was on his fancy leather couch with a gorgeous blonde woman straddling his lap. Her skirt was hiked up, his hands were all over her ass, and they were kissing like teenagers. The food containers slipped from my hands and crashed to the floor. They both jerked apart and looked up. The woman, who I later learned was Melissa, 34F, quickly stood and straightened her clothes. But Jake? He just sat there, staring at me with this annoyed expression. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Not "I can explain" or "this isn't what it looks like." Just irritation that I'd interrupted his office sex session. The security guard materialized behind me. "Everything okay here, Mr. Wilson?" Jake smoothed his hair and stood up. "It's fine, Tom. My wife was just leaving." My wife. Like it was the most normal thing to say while his lipstick-smeared mouth was still wet from kissing another woman. "Actually," I said, finding my voice, "your wife is just getting started." I walked into that office and demanded answers. Right there, in front of Miss Blonde Bombshell and what turned out to be an increasing crowd of curious coworkers peeking through the glass. That's when I discovered the horrifying truth: Jake had been introducing Melissa as his girlfriend to everyone at work. For 7 months. They had a whole relationship. Office parties, weekend trips, the works. He never mentioned having a wife. Not once. He'd created a completely separate life where I didn't exist. I walked out of that office leaving behind a half-naked woman, a humiliated husband, and a floor covered in steak and chocolate cake. I drove home in a daze, tears streaming down my face, barely able to see the road. When I got home, I found Emma sitting on the couch scrolling through TikTok. I told her what happened, expecting shock, rage on my behalf, something. Instead, she barely looked up from her phone and said, "Yeah, I know about Melissa." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. "What do you mean you know?" Emma shrugged like I'd asked her about the weather. "Dad's been seeing her for months. They're in love or whatever." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You knew your father was cheating on me and you didn't say anything?" She rolled her eyes. "It's not my relationship, not my problem." But it got worse. Much worse. Emma admitted she'd been covering for Jake for months. Making excuses when I called looking for him. Telling me he was at client meetings when he was actually on weekend getaways with Melissa. She even let them use her apartment sometimes when she was at college classes. When I asked her why, her answer knocked the wind out of me. "Because Melissa is cool. She gets me. She's not always nagging about college applications and curfews and eating vegetables like you." Turns out, Melissa had been working on Emma too. Taking her shopping, buying her expensive gifts, positioning herself as the cool stepmom while I was the boring, responsible one who made sure she did her homework and didn't drink and drive. Emma told me, with zero emotion, "Dad's happier with her. And honestly, it's not like you're my real mom anyway." 8 years of loving that girl. 8 years of parent-teacher conferences, doctor appointments, midnight talks about boys, college tours, birthday parties I planned while her actual mother was God knows where. 8 years of being a mother to her. And this is how she repaid me. I spent a week in a hotel, crying until my eyes were swollen shut. Jake sent the usual cheater's apology package, flowers, jewelry, teary voicemails about how it didn't mean anything, despite introducing Melissa as his girlfriend to his entire company. Emma's messages were even worse. She flipped between angry texts about how I was overreacting and fake sweet messages about how we could work through this as a family. At 3 a.m. on the 7th night, staring at the ceiling, I made my decision. I was done being everyone's doormat. Most people would have lost their minds after discovering the betrayal. But I decided to play a long game. A very long game. I went home and did something that would shock everyone. I acted like I was willing to forgive Jake. Completely. Totally. I became the picture of the understanding wife. "I love you so much," I'd tell Jake every night. "I want us to work through this." He ate it up. Thought he'd completely dodged a bullet. His guilt made him extra attentive, flowers, date nights, constantly checking in. Little did he know, I was setting up the most elaborate trap imaginable. Jake promised he'd end things with Melissa. Swore up and down he was a changed man. But people don't change, they just get better at hiding their shit. The truth came out slowly. I caught them sexting. Saw the naughty pictures. The plans for hookups. Jake thought he was being clever, but I was always 10 steps ahead. For 5 months, I was the model of forgiveness. But I was collecting everything. Every single piece of evidence. Bank statements. Text messages. Hotel receipts. I was gathering proof so meticulously that a divorce lawyer would weep with joy. Throughout these 5 months, I hoped, prayed, that Emma would show some remorse. That she'd come to me, cry, admit she was wrong. Beg for forgiveness. Not AF** keen chance. She continued her life like nothing happened. Went shopping with her friends. Posted on social media. Laughed. Partied. Zero indication that she felt bad about helping her dad destroy our family. Then came the moment that broke something inside me forever. One night, after Jake thought I was asleep, Emma and he were talking in the kitchen. I heard everything. Mom totally believes I'm sorry, Emma laughed. I've been playing her this whole time. Free clothes, extra spending money, playing the sad daughter card? Best scam ever. Jake laughed with her. Just keep milking it. She'll keep buying you stuff to make herself feel better. I discovered the horrifying truth: every hug, every tear, every moment of supposed reconciliation was a complete act. She had been manipulating me the entire time, pretending to love me just to get money and gifts. When I finally dropped the hammer, it was with the precision of a military operation. The blow came during a family dinner I carefully orchestrated. Jake's entire family was there: his parents, his siblings, his aunts and uncles. I waited until dessert was served, then casually dropped my evidence folder in the middle of the table. I have something to share, I said, my voice calm and cold. The room went dead silent as I methodically walked through Jake's cheating. Text messages. Hotel receipts. Photographs. Bank statements showing money spent on Melissa. I had everything documented. Jake's mother turned white. His father looked like he might have a heart attack. His sister started crying. Emma sat there, frozen, her perfect little facade cracking. Jake tried everything to stop me. First, he tried charm. Romantic gestures. Love letters promising to change. I smiled and filed them away as additional evidence. Then came the begging. Tearful conversations about our life together. Promises of marriage counseling. I listened, nodded, and continued my legal preparations. When charm and tears failed, he got desperate. Threats about cutting me off financially. Threats about the divorce settlement. I just smiled and reminded him of the mountain of evidence I had. Jake's family, who had always treated me like an outsider, suddenly started calling, trying to reason with me. They tried interventions. His mother called me daily, begging me to think of the family. His father offered me money to reconsider. I politely declined every single attempt. 2 months after I left, something changed. Jake started sending emails about how he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Apparently, Melissa had already moved on to someone else in the office, a younger guy with better prospects. Jake had been nothing but a stepping stone for her career advancement. Emma's attempts were even more pathetic. At first, she tried the sad, manipulative act that had worked before. She wrote me a long message detailing how sorry she was, claiming she had been manipulated by her father and Melissa. She said she missed me and realized I was more of a mother to her than anyone had ever been. But I knew the truth now. I had heard her laughing about manipulating me. I had zero emotional response left. When the financial reality hit, her tune changed fast. "You're ruining my future," she screamed during one confrontation. "How will I go to college?" I looked at her, this girl I had raised, loved, supported. I now felt absolutely nothing. "Figure it out," I said coldly. The divorce settlement was brutal. I took the house, both cars, half of Jake's retirement accounts, and Emma's college fund. Oh, I took every single penny I had ever contributed. $60,000 went straight into my personal account. Jake's company fired him once the full extent of his cheating came to light. Melissa dumped him immediately. Emma was left scrambling, forced to take out student loans and work multiple part-time jobs. She tried multiple desperate attempts to reconnect. Tearful letters. Sobbing phone calls. Showing up at my workplace. Each time, I shut her down faster and harder. The kicker came last week when I ran into Emma at a coffee shop. She looked terrible, unwashed hair, dark circles under her eyes, wearing the same hoodie she'd had since high school. She broke down crying right there among the lattes and muffins. She told me Jake had started drinking heavily, that their house was a disaster, that they were eating takeout every night because neither of them knew how to cook or clean. She admitted that Melissa had completely ghosted her after I left. No more shopping trips, no more girl time. She realized she'd been used as a pawn in their affair. She begged me to at least talk to them. Said they were falling apart without me. I told her I would think about it. I looked her dead in the eyes and said 6 words that would define our relationship forever. You destroyed our family first, sweetie. Some bridges aren't just burned. They're nuked from orbit. The divorce is almost finalized. I got promoted at work. I've started therapy and joined a hiking group where I've made new friends who don't stab me in the back. I'm dating again, nothing serious, but it feels good to be desired and appreciated. Part of me wants to tell Jake and Emma to live with the consequences of their actions. They betrayed me in the worst possible way, not just the cheating, but the lies, the conspiracy between them, the complete disregard for me as a person. But another part of me still remembers the little girl who used to crawl into bed with us during thunderstorms. Who looked at me with trust and love in her eyes. Before she became a teenager who helped her father cheat on me. Am I the asshole for taking the money? For walking away completely? For not being able to forgive either of them? I don't know what I'm going to do next. But for the first time in a long time, the decision is entirely mine. Update. Holy shit, the response to this post has been overwhelming. Thank you all for your support and advice. I met with Jake and Emma last weekend. I made it clear this wasn't a reconciliation, just a conversation. I needed answers. Jake confessed everything. Not just the affair with Melissa, but the systematic way he'd constructed this double life. He'd been telling colleagues I was his ex-wife for years. Even before Melissa, he'd been sleeping with other women from his company, from client firms, from the gym. He said he compartmentalized his life, family at home, sex everywhere else. When I asked why he didn't just ask for a divorce if he wanted to fuck other women so badly, he said he didn't want to lose the stability I provided. Translation: he didn't want to lose his personal chef, housekeeper, and part-time nanny who also contributed to the bills. Emma's explanation was even more disturbing. She admitted she'd actively helped Jake hide his affairs because she was terrified of our family breaking up. She thought if she helped him get it out of his system, he wouldn't leave me. But then she actually became friends with Melissa, who filled her head with all kinds of bullshit about how outdated monogamy is and how her dad deserved to explore his options. Melissa had promised Emma a glamorous life, connections to modeling agencies, introductions to important people, trips to Fashion Week in New York. All lies to get a teenager to help her fuck a married man. After our meeting, I spoke with my lawyer again. The divorce will be final next month. I'm not going back to Jake, that marriage is deader than disco. As for Emma, I've decided I can't completely cut her off. She was manipulated by 2 adults she trusted. So I've set up a smaller education fund for her, $20,000 of the money I took, with the stipulation that she continues therapy and maintains passing grades. It's not forgiveness. It's recognition that people make terrible mistakes, especially when they're young. While our relationship will never be what it was, I don't want to be the reason she can't get an education. As for Jake, he's on his own. He moved in with his brother and is supposedly attending AA meetings for the drinking problem that developed after I left. His company put him on probation after the HR investigation. I'm continuing with therapy and building my new life. I've actually started seeing someone, a fellow hiker from my group who treats me with respect and honesty. It's early days, but it feels healthy and real. Thank you to everyone who offered advice and support.